One of the more frequently asked questions on this channel is what anime do I like? And while I try to answer this question whenever it comes up, I did think it'd be fun to actually compile them into a list of my favorite anime. Now, a lot of these shows are just some of my favorite shows, period, not just in anime, but I think that it's a topic that a lot of people who surround my channel really like, and also a topic that I like as well. I think I've been pretty into anime ever since I was a teenager, but I even watched stuff as a kid as well. But I think as a kid, you don't really think of it as anime until you get a little bit older. A lot of this list is going to be well-known, popular anime. I'm not that much into niche anime, but maybe you might not know some of these, or maybe you might know every single one of these. Also for this video, since I don't want to get a copyright strike, I'll be using still frames over gameplay. Because again, I'm a video game channel and it'd be heartbreaking to get a copyright strike over an anime video. It'd be actually very funny even. To start off with some honorable mentions, they're not here in the honorable mention section because they're not as good as anything on the top 10 list, but they are here because I haven't rewatched them in years. So I think it'd be very unfair for me to actually put them on the list against other shows that I watched last year and have solidified in my mind that they are good. The first one I would put is ReZero. ReZero is a show that I just started watching, but it's unbelievably good, unbelievably tense, and emotional at times too. I am just about finished the first season of the show, so no spoilers, but I'm enjoying it so much, and I think it kind of defied all expectations I had of the show, and it actually subverts expectations of what it should be over and over again. It gets pretty gruesome, I will warn you of that if you want to watch the show, but it is beautiful, and I'd love to talk about the show more with people. Future Diary. This is one of the first anime that I remember watching and I was like, oh, this is what this genre can do. This is what Japanese cartoons can do. It's extremely brutal. I'm on the edge of my seat every time I'm watching this, but also it has some heartwarming moments too. I think that it's very difficult to watch this show and not come away from it with some weird opinions, and that's all I'll say about that. YuGiOh GX. This is a show I watched all the time as a kid. We even had like events where we go to each other's houses and watch some of the biggest duels. Really fun show, but again, I haven't watched it in years, but I remember loving it to absolute death. Speaking of death, Death Note. Death Note is a pretty big show in my generation because as teenagers, that was the show. That was a show that we were all becoming teenagers at the time, and when you were going around town, people would be like, have you seen Death Note? And it's still the same to this day. People are always like, you should watch Death Note. Like, it's one of the most suggested shows in history. It's a lot up there with Game of Thrones and all those shows. People constantly like, have you seen Death Note? I think Death Note still holds up. There's some stuff that's a bit shaky, but from what I've seen years ago, it was still pretty good. But again, I don't want to put it in my top 10 because I don't know if it's still that good since I haven't watched it since then. Last honorable mention is Assassination Classroom. I almost got it wrong there. Assassination Classroom is a show that I watched one weekend when I was really sick. So this will always have a special place in my heart. I think that the art is beautiful in the show. It's very colorful, very bright. I think that the soul of the show has something that not many other shows do have. There's a weird connection to every single character in this, and there's so much attention put on every single character in this show as well. You will get to know everybody, and that's what makes this show so heartbreaking altogether. At number 10, it's Parasite the Maxim. We follow a character named Shinichi Izumi, a poor little high school kid, as he tries to go through life with a parasite that has taken over his right hand named Migi. This parasite can talk to him. It's incredibly smart, incredibly diligent, and incredibly tough. There has been an infestation of parasites that have come to Earth and have taken over people's bodies. And one of the things that Shinichi is trying to do is to preserve the human race in many ways. But that's what's so cool about the core of the show. There's a lot of questions about what does make a human, what makes a person, and how a person can change over time. What makes the parasites less human than their counterparts that just look exactly like them. There actually are some interesting questions that made me think in this show. While I think a lot of these life's questions have been asked a million times over, there is that question of, well, we're coming down as parasites to eat all of you, eat all the humans. We've seen you eat cows. We've seen you eat fish. Why can't we eat you? And of course the answer would be, well, we're intelligent. And then the aliens are like, well, we're 50 times more intelligent than you, so how is this gonna work here? You know what I mean? And while of course it's kind of like one of those things that outside the show you can't really ask that question. I really feel like it's an interesting topic, and the show really does fixate on that interesting topic of what makes humans so special, what separates humans from different animals and different breeds of animals. And I think you get into that a lot in this show. On the side of that, it does have a lot of really beautiful emotional moments that center around a love story, that center around family. I really do think all those moments are done really well also. Number 9 is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. This is a show that to me is near perfect, but while it's near perfect, it didn't connect to me as much as the other shows on this list. But I do think it's one of those shows that anyone who has watched the show will tell you how good it is. How there's never really a hair out of place when you're watching it. We follow the story of Alphonse and Edward Elric as they are dealing with the aftermath of trying to bring back their mother from the dead. Now in alchemy, which is again the core of the show is alchemy, you can't take something without giving something of equal value. So trying to bring back a mother without offering anything in return really is a bad idea, and it's one of the forbidden arts. You shouldn't try to bring someone's life back. In the process of trying to bring back their mother, they lose a lot. Edward loses his arm and a leg and has to roam around with a robot or a robotic, or I guess mechanic arm and a mechanical leg. And his brother Alphonse loses his entire body and has to roam around in a suit of armor. Now, while this sounds really horrible, there's a lot of lighthearted moments too. I think this show does know how to affect people's emotions. There's so many times I've watched this show where I was just crying my eyes out, and the next minute I'm on the edge of my seat wondering if someone's going to live or not. I honestly feel like this show had everything planned out from the very first episode all the way to the end, how they were going to animate it, how they were going to portray the characters. Both the dub and the sub have these perfect voices that fit the characters so well. There's obviously a lot you can spoil about this show, but I think that I would leave it for people to watch it if they haven't seen it. I know a lot of people have already seen it, but that's just because it's a really fantastic show. At number 8, it's Samurai Champloo. I saw this show completely by accident, and that happened a lot with a lot of animes, and I think that happens a lot for all of us. We kind of just happen upon these shows in different ways, but this is such a wonderful experience to go through this entire show. It's kind of like a feudal Japan story mixed with the vibes and energy of like rap, like hip-hop. I know that sounds kind of strange, but you'd be surprised how well it fits together. It really does. We follow the stories of Fu, Mugen, and Jean, these 3 characters who could not be more different than each other. And of course, that's how you kind of have to write stories and create conflict. You have to have characters that are completely different from each other. But these 3 characters are almost so different from each other that they become perfect for each other in the end. They complete each other. Fu, who is kind of a clumsy, kind of like sometimes an airheaded girl who does have some amazing plans sometimes and has a lot of care for other people, while Mugen is a very brash and underhanded type of guy who will take any way he can to kill somebody, but is also an extremely tough and brazen individual. And then you have someone like Jean, who follows along with them too, who's very honorable, will fight you head on, and doesn't have a lot of disrespect in his body either. Putting them all together makes this interesting story. Fu is looking for a samurai that smells of sunflowers. And that's it. That's the plot of the story. That's what keeps them going. But it's the interactions between these 3 as they interact with the entire world is what makes this show so very special. The animation is superb. The music is honestly next level, and it's so different from any other anime you would see. The transitions where they go from scene to scene are also extremely unique to this show as well. I think what really attracted me to the show most of all, though, like I said, is those 3 people. Those 3 characters and how they explore this world, and we got to see it through their eyes. At number 7, it's a show that's not actually finished yet, and that's Mob Psycho 100, but this show has attacked my heart way too many times to not be in this list. I truly believe, not really, but I truly believe that if every single person in the show in the world watched Mob Psycho 100, they would have a completely different outlook. Mob is a character, the main character, who I would love to actually meet in real life. He's a character that every single person he meets in this show becomes better after interacting with him. And that's just not even like, I'm not even like over-exaggerating. He's the type of character that passes by people and they just become instantly better people. This show is about a character called Mob, who is a psychic, or I suppose you could say he has the powers of telepathy. And what Mob is able to do isn't that special in this world. There's so many people like him, but what's so special about Mob is that he is not only powerful, but he's able to channel his detailed and intricate emotions into his power as well. Whether it be sadness or happiness or anger, it all fuels his powers in some way, shape, or form. And because of this, he doesn't really have an issue with taking on other people's sadness either and taking it on his own shoulders, and it's what makes him such a special character. There's a lot of really cool violence in the show, a lot of amazing comedy. The animation, again, is very unique. Of course, it's kind of like similar to the style of One Punch Man, but I think that if anyone got to watch this show, they would really be in wonder of how good character Mob is. There's also a lot of character development. There's characters who, at the start of this show, you will probably be like, I don't like this person at all, and you will end up falling in love with them. At number 6, it's Attack on Titan. This is a show that honestly has become so popular that a lot of people start to kind of like dislike it because of how popular it's become, and a lot of people genuinely just like fell off after like the second season, which is totally understandable as well. I really think that where this show starts and where it is ending is one of the most perfectly book-ended series that I've seen. Where it begins and where it ends really is this amazing story. Now, I think everyone knows what Attack on Titan is, at least from the perspective of the first few seasons. I'm not going to spoil anything about the later seasons. That's not my job. I would never do that. But I will say that what's so fantastic about Attack on Titan is that where the show ends up is crazy, but it's expected if you look back on all the different clues. It's not a show that when something crazy happens, you go, oh, that's totally unexpected. It is unexpected, but at the same time, you can look back on season 1, 2, and 3, or 1 and 2, or whatever, and be like, there's the thread. It's a show that gives you the end of the thread and asks you to slowly follow along the way. And nothing is out of reach. Nothing is really out of the space of believability, because everything that happens is really able to be traced back to the earlier seasons. And I think that's a sign of good writing. This show, of course, has some gruesome, bloody action. It has some fantastic scenes of great wars and battles. But I think that it often gets overshadowed sometimes when we all look at these characters. And it's not just Eren, Mikasa, and Armin that we're talking about here. Characters that we have seen from the start that at first we thought would just be side characters are characters that we truly love now going into the 4th season. It's hard not to have a connection with all these people. They have spent so much time showing us how they live, showing us how their world is, and of course at the same time telling us about their past and their feelings and of course what they want to do in life too. I think Attack on Titan really is one of the best stories out there, not just in anime but in stories in general. And I'm so excited to see how this ends. Of course, it could all fall flat in its face coming towards the last season, but I really don't see that happening. It's like, it'll be like a student getting an A+ in every single test and all of a sudden failing with an F at the end. I don't see that happening. At number 5, it's another show that is not finished yet, and that's YuGiOh. I did not know what to expect when I came into this, but I saw so many people watching it and so many people praising it that I had to kind of try it out. I started watching it last year and really fell in love with the show from like the first season onwards. And I think that the show just has a building amount of quality. And I say this because the show gets better and better as seasons go on. In the previous season, the 4th season, it has some of the best episodes ever. And really, what this show does to separate itself from just being a sports anime is not only telling us about how each player is feeling at every single moment in the match, but it's making each match a real spectacle. I love watching volleyball now, in real life, not even joking. I love watching volleyball because of what happened in this show. And at first I thought there's no way volleyball can be this intricate, but of course it is. It takes so much practice and training to get as good as these people are. To even get as good as some of the bad players are in the show, it takes so much practice and training. And I have so much respect for the sport now outside of this because of this show. You follow the main character Hinata as he traverses his life through high school, coming from a place where he wasn't very good at volleyball just because he had no place to practice and no team to play with. He used to play with the girls' volleyball team because there was no one to actually play with. He would practice with tennis players, with basketball players, with soccer ball players. Anyone who would actually practice with him, he would practice with them. And honestly, that's the best thing I can say about Hinata's character. He is tenacious, he is always moving forward. Even in times of great stress and sorrow, you will always see Hinata trying to keep his head up in some way. And that's why he's such a fantastic character to follow. He's not a character that stays too far down in the dumps. He's a character that lets the audience know, follow me, and I will lead you on a great story. And that's why I love him so much. And of course I love the other characters too. Whether it be Kageyama or whether it be Tanaka or Nishinoya or even like Asai, all these characters on the team as well really not like grow on you very quickly. There's some characters who I despised at the beginning, but now can't help but like support them greatly. I don't know if you've ever seen Rugrats, but there's an episode of Rugrats where Angelica defends the kids after being mean to them for so long. And there's kind of like this situation of, you know, I can make fun of these characters. I can make fun of the character Suki. I can make fun of him, but then as soon as other people start making fun of him in the show, I'm like, you don't make fun of Suki. That's our Suki. And he's a fantastic character too. Not only that, but it makes you feel for the other characters on the other side of the teams as well. You were kind of so in the moment when watching these matches, supporting Karasuno, that it gets to the point that you're kind of being a little bit brazen. You're shouting kind of like, you know, oh god, Karasuno, get the ball, kill the ball, get these guys, eliminate them. But as soon as the match is over, you look at these other teams that seemed like enemies before, see the tears in their eyes, and realize that everyone's kind of the same in the show. Everyone is kind of feeling that emotion, wanting to be getting better at this game. And I really love how they do this in this show. They don't just let the bad guys, quote unquote, on the other side of the team just turn into stereotypical sports enemies or obstacles to beat. They become characters that you get to know as well, so that you can see their personality through their playing as well. At number 4, it's Soul Eater. This is a very old one, but it's one of those shows that was quickly recommended to me right after I originally finished Death Note. And that was by this random person that was friends with a friend that I knew, who was just like, you should watch Soul Eater, you would really like it. I picked up Soul Eater, and at first I didn't know really what to expect, because I went from kind of more serious stuff with like the Future Diary and Death Note, and went into this, which at first seems extremely goofy, but then you realize that the style of the show is just really off the charts. I really think that the animation and the art style of this particular anime is better than most I've ever seen. It's hard not to like admire every single frame of the show when it's so distinct in its style, whether it be to the eyeballs, to the way the characters compress their faces when they get angry, or the movements of each character's like elbows. It's so different and unique, and it makes this show so special. I believe that it's also kind of present in the new show called Fire Force, because it is the same director, I believe, but I have so much love for Soul Eater. On top of the animation, the basic theme of the show is friendship. And that's the same with a lot of animes. I know people hate the idea of the power of friendship. I don't really care. I love the power of friendship because it is a powerful thing. And in this show, it's about vibing with each other. In this show, they have these things called weapon meisters, and of course they have weapons as well. The weapons are actual people that turn into weapons. The meisters are people that wield the weapons, and you have to find a companionship with the weapon, with your meister or your weapon, so you can pull off these amazing moves. And because of this, we get to see these weapons and meisters grow as friends, or whether it be growing as emotional partners or whatever throughout the show. Sometimes you'll say, well, why is this character like Black Star even with this weapon? This weapon is so fantastic in what she does. Why is he even with her at this point? Like, she should just get rid of Black Star and they'd be much better. Then they give you that episode where you realize, okay, they're perfect for each other, and that's why they should be here. There's a lot of scary characters, some fantastic designs for enemies as well. There's some amazing music, and some of the best intros and outro songs that you'll ever see too. It also has some really cool characters that you wouldn't see in an anime before this, such as Krona. I'm not going to spoil anything about Krona, but I will say that it's a very special character that wasn't really in any anime before this, and I love that character as well. I love him so much. I love the show so much. Up next is a show called Monster, and there's not many shows, anime or otherwise, that I can say haunt me. And this is a show that I think about at least once per day, whether it be the music of the opening in the intro just playing in the back of my mind, or it's the characters' voices like permeating through my brain as well. There's so much about this show that has stuck with me, to the point that like some of it I don't want it to be in my head, some of it I need it to be in my head. There's genuine moments in this show where I am unnerved, I feel sick, and I feel like I can't go on with it. It has one of the best villains in the history of any anime called Johann Liebert that I've ever seen. He is terrifying, he is maniacal at times, and he has one of the best and weirdest motivations I've ever seen, and it really just takes watching this show to truly believe what he's like. It also has one of the best protagonists ever in an anime, and Dr. Kenzo Tenma. One of the strangest things about this, he's probably one of the only characters on this list that is not a teenager as the star of the show. He's like a middle-aged man to a third, actually not even middle-aged, he's like 30 to 40, I believe. That's not middle-aged at all. He's actually quite young still, but he's not a teenager is what I mean. Dr. Kenzo Tenma is a doctor who had everything in his life pretty much taken away from him after he was accused, or is being accused of a murder and now is going on the run. His whole position in this show is that he wants to kill Johann, but along the way, so many characters are telling him, that's not you. You're not that person. You're not a killer. But he believes that it's his fault as he saved the killer's life when he was a kid. The killer, Johann Liebert, was shot through the frickin' skull and survived because of Dr. Kenzo Tenma. It is a really harrowing and sometimes really heartbreaking story, but the twists and turns in this show, I can never get over. How much time they spent on each little detail, seriously, is something that I have never seen in any show before. It's quite slow. It wouldn't remind you of many other anime. In fact, there's no fan service, there's no crazy art style, there's no like crazy anime moments. They take everything incredibly seriously, and that's one of the things that's so striking about this show. I will say this, if you are thinking of watching this amazing, fantastic show with one of the best stories I've ever seen in any show, I would say that there's a lot of stuff that people who are easy to, not easy to upset, people who have gone through trauma with this type of stuff in their lives, or people who relate to this type of stuff, whether it be, I'm just going to go out and say it, whether it be stuff like genocide or racism, or whether it be murder, or whether it be, torture, anything like this that's really horrible. Obviously, like, guys, it's not as bad as I'm making it out to be, but I'm just trying to make sure that people who watch this show don't come back to me and say, hey, Calvin, this show made me feel really bad. I don't want that to be the case, because I really feel like it's an amazing show, but I just hope people know what they're getting into. It's a show that will not make you feel good. There's times when there's a lot of uplifting moments. There is times when you feel like it's really fantastic, but there's also times when it feels horrible. But it needs to feel horrible because the character in the show is horrible. The main bad guy and all of the bad guys that you encounter in the show are freaking horrible. They're some of the worst people I've ever seen in my life. And if I ever encountered these type of people, I'd be terrified, but also I'd be disgusted. I'd be absolutely disgusted. But then you have the opposite side with characters like Dr. Kenzo Tenma, Nina Fortner, Dieter, or even like Heinrich Lunge, who is a detective who's honestly a really good detective, just so bad at managing his life at the same time. I really feel like those characters counterbalance it. Like Mob Psycho in a way, Dr. Kenzo Tenma, everyone he meets, he kind of improves their life along the way too. I don't want to spoil too much more because the story is crazy. It's crazy good as well. But if you are into this type of show, or if you are into this type of thing, which by the way, I'm pretty squeamish too. I had like that feeling in my stomach of like, this is really scary. It is one of the best stories I've ever seen. And number 2, it's YuGiOh, the original YuGiOh. This is my childhood show. This is the show, the first ever anime I watched, and it is a show that I didn't even know was an anime as a kid. I was obsessed with the card game as a kid as well, which is kind of what leads me to love this show so much. It's a comfort show for me. Of course, it's about the character Yugi Moto playing Duel Monsters, which some people will call a children's card game. I call it a card game that I still haven't grown out of, and who cares? I love it. I love YuGiOh so freaking like a lot. I love it so much. And number 2, we have YuGiOh. Yes, the original YuGiOh. This is my comfort show. This is a show I watched as a kid so much. It's a show that I obsessed over, that I rewatched over and over again even as a kid, that I made Yu-Gi-Oh decks to play with my friends based on this show. This show was so popular for the franchise of Yu-Gi-Oh that they still sell, even after the show ended, all the way back in like 2004 or 5, I forget the actual specific time, but even when the show ended, they were still selling to this day the faces of those characters on different merchandise because they always sell, because they're some of those popular characters in anime history. Everyone knows who Kaiba is just from looking at him. Everyone knows who Yugi is just by looking at him. And while there is Yugi, who is the main character who is playing dual monsters in this game, in this show, fighting against evildoers who are trying to send people to the Shadow Realm, I think really there's a lot more to this show as well. You have a character like Joey Wheeler who you get to see grow as a duelist, and through that grow as a person as well. You get to see how he relates to Yugi and how he relates his own journey to Yugi at the same time. You get to see a character like Kaiba quickly go from one of the biggest villains to be one of the characters that everyone just adores. Like, even if he's still such an asshole, everyone just kind of adores him towards the end of this show. I really feel like YuGiOh is a show that is iconic. It's a show that, like, I think no one would really be shocked that it's in anyone's top 10 anime list, especially since it has a lot of beautiful moments too. There's a lot of beautiful love between characters in this. There's friendship, there's honesty, and sometimes there's even great sadness. But I think there's times in this show where I feel sad, but the best pillar of this show is the fact that we get to watch people play duel monsters over and over again, and it's awesome. Every duel is so tense, every duel kind of means something, even the smallest of duels, and because of that you get to learn about these characters through those duels. I love this show so much. And my favorite anime of all time is Beck, Mongolian Chop Squad. I was searching through Funimation one day, and I heard that they started adding movies to their subscription service. So I searched movie into the search bar, and the only thing that came up was Beck. I was like, what is this? What is Beck? And like, I didn't even look it up. I watched the first episode, and I was like, that was a freaking masterpiece of a first episode. Beck is a show about a character called Koyuki, who wants to learn how to play guitar to impress people, but as time goes on, you really feel like he's learning guitar for himself instead. He meets up with these group of characters who all are like-minded when it comes to music, but are a little gruffer and tougher than him and really will help him get more life experience at the same time. He falls in love with a girl named Maho, and who couldn't? Maho was one of my favorite characters ever. And that contrast is kind of like, I think, one of people's favorite ship dynamics ever, is like the really quiet and kind of like nervous Koyuki and the very outgoing and tough and brazen character of Maho, and they work so well together as they're going along in the show. The thing that this show gets better than most other live action shows, and I'll say this right away, is jealousy. Jealousy is a big theme in the show because you have a character who's definitely trying to get better all the time, and around him he's surrounded by dudes who are more quote-unquote attractive, dudes who are better at instruments than him, dudes who are better at writing than him, dudes who are more famous than him, and dudes that honestly will get more attention than him at the same time. And it's more of a quiet jealousy. I think one of the worst things that shows do all the time is when it comes to jealousy is they'll have a guy be like, hey, get off my girl, and they'll go up and have a fight. That doesn't really happen. Sometimes like jealousy is just you're sitting there watching, you know, your boyfriend talk to someone, your girlfriend talk to someone, or someone you like talk to someone, and you can't do anything about it. And they do that in the show. They show Koyuki sitting there like, well, I can't say anything because that would be freaking weird. You know, that would be so freaking creepy. And it feels so horrible to watch this kid go through this, but at the same time, you know that it's a feeling that everyone gets sometimes. It's a feeling that everyone gets at times. And that's why it's so understandable at the same time. The journey of Koyuki from start to finish, from lowly guitar player who can barely play a chord, to a guy who can play, you know, barely any chords but still is getting better and better and eventually becomes one of my favorite musicians in any single existence ever, and one of my favorite characters. I really feel like Koyuki learns a lot from these characters that surround him and makes friends for life. There's a lot of amazing moments in the show that are centered around music, and that's the heart of the show, is the music. You'll hear songs that over and over again that they keep practicing that mean more as they go on with the story. You'll see new characters who come into the show who also affect Koyuki in a big way too. I think the reason why I will always remember this show so much is because it takes itself seriously while allowing its characters to be a bit off the wall and crazy. It takes the emotional moments and makes them more serious, and it takes the funny moments and puts them out there in a really crazy way. I don't think they make much anime like this anymore. I know I sound like an old coot right now, but I only watched this like 3 years ago and it really shot up into my top favorite animes of all time. I wish I could watch this for the first time again, because now, ever since I rewatched it for the third time, I don't think I can ever do it again. It's heartbreaking every single time, and I don't think I can ever do that to myself again.
What is the meaning of this? How dare school property be used in such a manner? Who's responsible?
A delinquent, I'm sure.
Hey, it's Tanaka. Of all the kids, turn that mess off. You're in big trouble.
Guys, I know this was a weird list, but I thank you so much for watching this video, and if you have any show on this list that you love too, please let me know. And if not, please let me know what your favorite anime of all time is. And of course, if not, if you don't like anime, tell me what your favorite show is as well. I think I probably just went down 12 points on the cool thread for a lot of people, but who cares? Anime is awesome. Anime is awesome.